My best friend was getting married, and I was her maid of honor. At least, that's how the story started. Her name was Juliette Renard, and if perfection had a face, it would have been hers. Glossy blonde waves, meticulous eyeliner, the kind of woman who knew how to turn heads without looking like she tried. We met freshman year in college. She was majoring in marketing, I was in design. Somehow, despite being opposites, we clicked. She was loud, luminous, confident, and I was quieter, the one who noticed details. I used to think we balanced each other out. Now I know she was just making sure she always had an audience. When she called one night to tell me she was engaged, I screamed into the phone like a teenager. "Oh my God, Jules! Who?" "Cameron," she said, voice dripping with triumph. "Cameron St. James." My stomach flipped. Cameron? The guy she'd met at one of my networking mixers? The guy who'd spent half the evening talking to me before she swooped in. Still, I smiled through the phone. "You're amazing! Congratulations!" "Right?" she said. "You'll be my maid of honor, won't you?" Of course I said yes, because that's what you do for best friends. Even when something deep inside you whispers that you're stepping onto a stage built out of someone else's envy. The wedding planning was a circus. Juliette was the ringleader, juggling florists, photographers, cake tastings, and me, her unpaid assistant/therapist. Every day was another meltdown. The roses are too pink. The seating chart looks like a funeral. The caterer said they can't do lobster soufflé. Can you believe that? I'd soothe her, fix things, keep the chaos spinning. And then there were the comments. Little things she'd toss out like stones wrapped in sugar. "You know, Jennifer," she'd say, because that's me, Jennifer Morgan, "you'd look so pretty if you just wore more makeup." Or, "It's wild how you've never had a serious boyfriend. Maybe you're just intimidating?" I used to laugh them off, but sometimes, when I caught her staring at me too long, I'd see something darker behind her smile. Cameron was the only part of the process that felt real. He was kind, soft-spoken, the kind of man who held doors open and actually listened when you talked. He'd thank me every time I stayed late helping Juliette organize things. Once, when she'd stormed out of a vendor meeting, he sighed and said, "She means well. She just gets overwhelmed." I wanted to believe that. One night, after another 10-hour day of planning, we were packing up leftovers from a tasting session. Cameron leaned on the counter, exhausted. "You know," he said, "you've done more for this wedding than anyone. She's lucky to have you." I smiled, but something about the way he said it made my chest tighten. Not in a romantic way, in a sad way. Like he knew he'd signed up for a performance, not a partnership. Still, I changed the subject, because boundaries matter, especially with people like Juliette. 3 weeks before the wedding, I stayed over at her apartment to finalize table assignments. Juliette was half drunk on champagne, scrolling through her phone while I organized place cards on the floor. She'd left to take a bath when her phone buzzed. I wasn't snooping, I swear, but the screen lit up with Cameron's name, and my eyes caught just enough of the message to freeze me cold. "Why do you keep saying that about her?" The preview showed only that line. My pulse quickened. I didn't want to know more, but I also couldn't look away. Juliette's phone had no lock. She'd once bragged that trust is my love language. So I opened the thread, and there it was. Message after message. Juliette telling Cameron that I'd always been jealous of their relationship, that I'd tried to flirt with him before she introduced us, that I'd confessed feelings for him once when I was drunk. All lies. But the worst part wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Casual, playful, like my reputation was just another accessory in her bridal ensemble. Cameron's replies were confused but polite. "I think you're misreading her," he wrote once. "She's just trying to help." To which Juliette answered, "Oh, I know her. She's always had a thing for you. Just don't fall for it, okay?" I stared at the words until my vision blurred. It wasn't jealousy. It was precision cruelty. The kind that ruins trust just enough to isolate you, the same way she'd done to every other friend she'd ever had. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't cry, or scream, or even flinch when she came out in her robe humming some pop song. Instead, I smiled. "I think everything's ready," I said, because at that moment, I knew what I'd do. You can't fight people like Juliet with emotion. You fight them with timing. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked in silence. Perfect, smiling, obedient silence. I attended fittings, smiled through bachelorette parties, helped her write vows. But in the background, I was building something else. Cameron's messages were my starting point. I took screenshots of the entire thread and backed them up on my drive. Then I went deeper, through her emails, her shared folders, her wedding planner app. Juliet was careless. She'd synced her laptop to cloud storage, and the same arrogance that made her lie also made her sloppy. That's how I found the other conversations. She'd told her bridesmaids that my dress better not outshine her. She'd complained that Jennifer needs to lose 10 pounds before the photos. And worst of all, she'd written to her mother, "I only asked her to be maid of honor so she wouldn't make a scene. You know how pathetic she gets." That was the moment I stopped feeling sorry for her. That was the moment the plan crystallized. The wedding day arrived like a storm wrapped in silk. Sunlight, laughter, champagne, lies. We gathered in the bridal suite, hairdressers, photographers, bridesmaids fluttering like pastel moths. Juliet looked radiant, of course, radiant and smug. "You're crying," she teased as I pinned her veil. I smiled. "Just happy tears." She laughed, tilting her head toward the mirror. "You'll find someone someday, Jennifer. Maybe one of Cameron's groomsmen can throw you a pity dance." The girls giggled. I said nothing, because I'd already arranged everything. The reception was in a glass-walled ballroom overlooking the harbor. Golden hour light spilled through the windows, catching every sequin, every champagne bubble. The speeches started. Her father went first, teary-eyed and proud. Then the best man. Then Juliet, radiant in her white gown, thanked everyone for celebrating the best day of my life. Finally, it was my turn. The DJ handed me the mic. My palms were cool, my voice calm. "I've known Juliet for nearly a decade," I began, smiling at her. "We've been through everything together. Laughter, heartbreak, growth, and a lot of secrets." A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. "Juliet's the kind of friend who teaches you lessons you never forget," I continued. "Some about love, some about loyalty, and some about what happens when those get confused." I paused, taking a sip of champagne. "But today isn't about me. It's about honesty." And on that cue, the projector behind her flickered to life. The screen filled with text bubbles, her messages, every word she'd ever said about me. "She's always had a thing for you. She's jealous, but I can manage her. I only made her maid of honor to keep her quiet." Gasps erupted around the room. Juliet froze, her champagne flute halfway to her lips. "Juliet," I said softly, handing her the mic, "I thought maybe you'd like to continue the toast to honesty." Silence. Then chaos. She stammered, "Jennifer, what? This isn't. Someone hacked." Cameron stood, pale, staring at the screen. "You said that?" he asked quietly. "It's out of context," she snapped. She's obsessed with me. You know how she gets." But no one was looking at me anymore. They were looking at her. Her mother covered her mouth. Her bridesmaids shifted uncomfortably. The DJ froze mid-song. "Juliet," Cameron said again, voice breaking, "you told me she tried to come between us. You said she—" "I did it for us," she blurted. She would have ruined everything." He stepped back. "No," he said, "you did." Then he turned, walked out, and didn't look back. The fallout was instant. Guests whispering, cameras flashing, her father trying to shut down the projector. Juliet lunged for me, mascara streaking, but the crowd separated us like waves around a sinking ship. I didn't say another word. I just walked out, calm, steady, the echo of my heels cutting through the silence. Outside, the air was cool. The harbor glowed with reflections of city lights. Somewhere behind me, I heard the music stop completely. I didn't look back. By morning, the entire story was online. Someone had filmed the toast, of course. They always do. It went viral before sunrise. Bride exposed by maid of honor at wedding. The headlines wrote themselves. Juliet deleted her socials within a day. Cameron filed for annulment within a week. And me? I went quiet. No interviews, no statements, just silence, the kind that lets truth echo on its own. Months later, I visited the cafe where Juliet and I used to plan our futures. It was late autumn. The air smelled of cinnamon and endings. I sat by the window, scrolling absently through my phone, when someone slid into the seat across from me. Cameron. He looked tired, older somehow, but there was kindness in his eyes. "I've been trying to find the right way to say this," he said. "Thank you for saving me from something I didn't see." I smiled faintly. "You don't owe me anything." He shook his head. "Maybe not, but you deserve peace." He left a folded note on the table and walked away. Inside was a single line. "Honesty looks good on you." That night, I lit a candle in my apartment, the way I always do when I finish something difficult. The flame flickered, soft and steady. People always ask if I regret it, if I feel guilty for humiliating her. I don't, because the truth doesn't humiliate, it clarifies. It strips away the glitter until only substance remains. Juliet spent years crafting perfection like armor. But the thing about armor is, once it cracks, everyone sees what was underneath. And sometimes, what's underneath isn't cruelty, it's fear. Fear of being ordinary. I don't hate her anymore. I just finally stopped letting her write my narrative. Now, when people talk about the toast, they imagine vengeance. But that's not what it was. It was truth, served cold and public because private warnings never reached her. It was the kind of justice that doesn't shout, it just shows. And if you were in that ballroom, you'd understand what I mean. The moment when the screen lit up and her perfect composure cracked, it wasn't revenge, it was revelation. Because the thing about people who manipulate is, they count on silence, and the moment you stop being silent, their whole empire collapses. These days, I design for a living. Not weddings, I'm done with those. I build visual stories for brands that value authenticity. And sometimes, when I stand before a client presentation, I think about that toast, about the hush that fell before the truth appeared, about how fragile performance becomes when the curtain finally lifts. So I raise a quiet toast in my mind, not to her, not to him, but to the version of myself that finally learned how to show, not tell. To honesty, I whisper. Because in the end, that was never her wedding. It was my awakening. You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.